talk about fund development today. I wanted to just start out with a simple quote because I think there's a little neurosis around fund development that we can sometimes get. And so Peter Drucker once said, fundraising is going around with a begging bowl because the need is so great. Fund development is creating a constituency that supports the organization because it deserves it. So in the first example, there's clearly more of a sales or predatory kind of approach to it. And I want to suggest that today, for this session, we think about fund development as relationship building and not just kind of getting somebody in our sight line. So the name of this session altogether is the role of the CEO and board in fund development. And I want to suggest that fund development gets its start, the tone is set by CEOs, executive directors, and board members. You know, as the leaders for your organization, the word to lead, you know, whether you use it as a verb or a noun, has the sense of you're out in front, you're presiding, you're setting a tone, you're bringing others along. And fund development falls under your leadership responsibilities just as anything else: planning, enrollment, client satisfaction. So boards lead their institutions and they lead the CEO, and the CEO or executive director leads their board as well, as we know, and leads their organizations, and there's this reciprocity to it. So let me just ask you, what are some words that describe what leadership is? What does it mean to lead? What does a leader do? What does a leader do?
Give example.
Give examples.
Empowers.
Empowers.
Visible.
Being visible.
Mentors.
Mentors.
Serves.
Serves. Serves and
Casts a vision.
casts a vision. Excellent. I came up with a couple of others. You mentioned many of these. Let's see, being accountable. But I think you all said in one way or another these other things. And so I want to suggest, how do we do that as leaders in terms of fund development? How do we inspire? How do we motivate? How do we set an example? How are we accountable? So we know that in running a ministry or any nonprofit organization, there are these relative realms where the board operates above this invisible horizontal line in space, and where the staff operates below that line. And generally, boards play a strategic governing role where they're planning direction, monitoring results, setting policies, and so forth. And the CEO and his or her staff follows direction, enacts the plans, conveys results back to the board. And generally, these two spheres are maintained. But you can see where this purple and yellow shared line is. This is an area where there's a blending. And fund development is typically one of these areas where the line is crossed or worked on together, because it wouldn't be good to have board members not become more involved in fund development, which is relationship building with donors. And it's not a sense of kind of treading on the terrain of staff, but how can these two entities support each other? So that's what this purple and yellow line represents. What are some of the challenges or difficulties that you or your fellow board members have had around fund development?
What is the message?
What is the message?
And
Okay.
who are you going to give it to both?
Right. You'll say connections. Being able to be connected to individuals that actually have the money.
Forming connection. Okay.
How to engage them.
How to engage donors.
Teaching people to ask.
You just can't ask people for money if you didn't do the development part first.
Needs to be something in place. Not everybody likes to ask for money. And I mean, do people in the room feel, well, here are some of the common challenges that I hear working with nonprofit organizations in terms of the difficulty of doing fund development. It's hard to find the time. Board members or CEOs may not feel they have the knowledge or experience, know what to do, or anxiety, reluctance about asking people for money, the kind of fear of rejection, or I don't want to hurt people's feelings. Or, as was said, not sure what to ask for, what's the message, or we don't have the donor relationships in place. Very common one is board members not being certain of what their role is. I'm willing to do something to help out, but tell me how. Help me understand what it is I need to do. How can I be of the greatest assistance to you? Or a feeling that, where you're fortunate enough to have staff, the staff really do development. I don't see what my part is. So I want to suggest for this workshop and kind of thinking ahead that we change the prism, or we change how we view fund development. Because typically it's been this seller approach. We need to find people who can make a gift to us. And if we flip that a little bit or invert it differently and we have a donor focus, it becomes this very beautiful kind of blossoming notion of we want to help individuals realize their aspirations and provide opportunities to deliver benefits. We want to help people realize their aspirations. That's what it's about. People want to do good, they want to give their money, they want to give their time, and they want to feel this sense of having made a meaningful difference, and we want to give them that opportunity. And if they want to give to another organization instead, God bless them, lots of great causes out there, fantastic. But let's at least make it easy for them to step into relationship with us and offer this opportunity to let us help you achieve for you and your family what it is you want to achieve. What it comes down to is a relationship where we can actually match the donor's interests with our needs, not the other way around. So we need to understand, we need to listen, we need to ask questions and get feedback and know who it is we're talking to and have a genuine relationship. Honestly, at its heart, fund development is friend development. Because of course there's value to cash gifts that we get, but there's value to the relationship that we're in all together, to the connections that friends and supporters can make for us with other people, other institutions, to partnership opportunities that develop. So we need to play kind of, long ball. We need to be thinking long term about these relationships that we're going to be planting seeds for and nurturing along. And we know there's plenty of evidence that donors will make larger and more frequent gifts when they have this head and heart connection to an organization, and when they feel heard and respected and listened to and appreciated. And it's so powerful just to listen to people and let them feel seen and heard. And we can offer that. So I want to suggest that as CEOs and board members, a key role is you're the primary relationship officers for your organization. There's really no one who can do it as well as you. Question?
You may get to it, but in the organizations that I've been involved with, the databases and the information gathering and the retention of that data is where a lot of people, fall short, because the average development person, you only stays a short period of time. And you cultivate and get all this information, and then what do you do with it? You have to keep it somewhere, and it has to be accessible.
It's a very common problem because development officers turn over every 18 months. It's really bad, but that's how it is out there, which speaks even more to why board members and CEOs and executive directors need to hold the relationships primarily, not development officers, because they come and go. But the volunteers and the executive staff generally stay longer. And so there's a particular role for where volunteers are there. And, there's a tone that's set. If you as leaders embrace fund development differently, that's going to send a signal to donors and to people in the community, business leaders, civic leaders that you're talking to. They'll pick up on that, just as they'll pick up on your reluctance or discomfort even talking about money with them. And staff will pick up on that too. If they see the board and the CEO, they're really leading this effort. Fund development's a good thing, not a necessary evil. They'll have a certain relationship with it as well. So there's a tone that's set by you as leaders. So just building on this idea a little bit further, it's the idea that board and CEO leaders are conduits or connectors. That's you, essentially. So you're connecting somebody who wants to do good in the community with your ministry's programs or services or activities. You're making a connection for people who want to make a difference and a tangible way of doing so. Now, you may have experienced this, but when this works really, really well and people feel this connection to an organization, they have this sense of shared ownership. They're not just writing a check or showing up for an event, but they actually feel, I'm part of this thing. I'm making a difference. I mean, I'm really helping kids graduate from the school, or I'm helping families who would otherwise be on the street. I mean, I'm in it. So this is where we really aspire to in fund development is having donors have this sense of shared ownership. And things have changed in the environment of fund development. Historically, there was this sense of checkbook philanthropy, where you see a TV commercial that really moves you, or you get something in the mail and you want to help, you write a check right away, and that still happens, but it's given way to this kind of donor-investor mentality, where donors are being much more thoughtful, much more intentional about where they're putting their money and why. And Forbes just ran a study that the Center for Responsive Philanthropy did a few weeks ago that looked at trends in philanthropy. And these are the trends, and they all have to do with donors thinking about where to invest their money. They want to do impact investing, collaborative philanthropy, get to the root causes of problems, not just treat the symptoms, venture philanthropy, where we can invest a lot of money in a particular way for the greatest good. So this is very different than just merely seeing a hungry child and wanting to do something about it. So we need to be aware of the head and the heart. We need to be able to make a profound case for the rational reasons why we make a difference in the community, and then the personal, heartfelt, transformative, human reasons why we make a difference in the world. Something else going on in fund development these days is that donors have much higher expectations of the organizations they're giving to because of the voluminous amounts of information accessible on everything out there. So much greater needs for transparency, much greater needs for accountability, much greater needs for feeling a sense of participation, being involved. I want to do more than write a check. I don't know what it is, but I want to do something more than that. And having some evidence that your ministries are making a difference. It's money that's being invested well. There's a return on investment. So I would put forth that as board leaders and CEOs, you're uniquely positioned to help meet these donor expectations through your relationships, through communication, through interaction, because you can answer questions, you can provide information, and you can instill a sense of trust and credibility in the work you're doing. There are many key reasons why people don't give to an organization, and the number one reason, it's been the number one reason always, and it'll be the number one reason always, is they were never asked. It's the number one reason they weren't they didn't give, they weren't asked. But these are also important reasons, and this kind of gets to Todd's point earlier. First, their needs, their interests, and their readiness weren't understood. We didn't understand where they were coming from, what they wanted to do, how much they wanted to give. The organization didn't make a strong case. It wasn't compelling in terms of the benefits to the community, the difference that the organization makes. Didn't share the vision, didn't share the future plans. Wasn't good communication, wasn't good cultivation. A specific amount wasn't asked for relative to the donor's ability, and this really relates to major donors in particular. And then finally, and it's not at the bottom because it's the least amount, it just happens to be number 7, the organization didn't involve people who could influence the gift. That means board members and the CEO, because you, as the leaders, have a particular passion and commitment and hold a particular place for the organization that resonates with donors. It resonates in a way that a development officer doesn't. Henry Rosso said, "Fund development is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving." So, we could look at our own neurosis maybe around not wanting to ask people for money or feeling like we're being burdensome or annoying. it's actually a wonderful thing when people can write a check and help an organization and feel good about it. So we want to help them feel as good as they can, right? So as I mentioned, things start with the CEO and the board because you have your own personal passion and commitment, but you hold knowledge about what the organization's achieving in the community, or what the challenges are, or what the plans for the future are, and no one can articulate that as well as you. So you kind of hold that seat. And being donors to your ministry yourselves, it's just added credibility, added strength. I mentioned a couple of things already, but I just want to touch on a couple of bullet points up there. So donors want to know the CEO and board members because it gives them a feedback opportunity, because we don't do enough listening in this society. We do a lot of our own talking and a lot of our own asking, but not enough listening. And so one of the most powerful and profound things that you can do is just listen, to ask your supporters, what is it we're doing right? Maria, you've been a donor for 15 years. Tell us why. What is it you like about us? What are we doing well? And then don't talk. Just listen. And when they feel that sense of relationship, it'll make it easier for them to think about their friends and their networks, their spheres of influence, and involving those people. So fund development can be seen as a collaborative relationship, and there are particular roles. So the CEO can support the board or the CEO's staff through doing research on donors, basic profile information. Who are the foundations we want to go to, for example? Taking a lead on planning. As was said earlier, we need a plan. That's going to be the strongest basis for how well we're able to implement things if we know what the plan is, what we're doing. Coordinating development activity, helping board members make the calls or set up the luncheons or host the gatherings. Providing good reporting to board members on what exactly is happening, how effective is our fund development program altogether. Training, I hear this constantly from boards. Help us understand what more we could do. How do I make the ask? Or what is it that I can do to be of help to the development program? I want to do it, but help me understand how. And then finally, encouragement from the CEO that thank you, and we need more of your help and assistance. Now, this board also needs to help the CEO and his or her team through, first of all, planning, being part of that process, not just passively receiving, here's a development plan for the year and we want board members to help out with it, but board members need to steep in it, need to be part of that planning process, and being available, being ready, willing, and able to assist in fund development in a way that makes sense for each board member, helping with coordination of calls and meetings and events, providing oversight on the reporting. So here's the report on what's happening, and the board is deciding how well is it going, how well are we doing? And then encouragement back to the CEO, because the CEO is in a tough position. This is a tough time to be running a ministry or a nonprofit organization. So CEOs need all the support and love they can get. When it actually comes time to talking with donors, the CEO board combination is particularly potent. In fact, there's no more potent pair of individuals, because you're the penultimate leaders of your organization, and it really says a lot to a donor when it's the board chair or a board member. It doesn't have to be the chair and the chief executive officer sitting down for coffee or having a meal. That donor is going to feel seen and heard and will feel special. Now, some of you have staff to help with development activity, which is great. Some of you don't. But staff are never a substitute for the role of the CEO and the board. They're a complement. So, for example, you may have staff at your ministry doing research on foundations to send proposals to, and they're actually putting the proposals together. But it's the board and the CEO who should be sitting down and meeting with the foundation representatives and focusing on that relationship. Not just having the development person fire off the grant proposals, or not even having them go and meet at the foundation, because they could be gone in 18 months, but having the leaders of the organization. Same for your annual fund. Your development person may be doing a year-end annual fund appeal letter and kind of thank-a-thon. That's fine, let them do the logistics. But it's the board and the CEO signing letters, writing notes to donors in the margins, making the thank you calls, letting them, feel, touch, and hear an actual person. Or if you do small group hosted gatherings or some kind of donor get-together, staff can do the logistics and coordination, but it's the board and the CEO who are the hosts, who are clearly the ones doing the inviting and kind of holding the space. So again, it's a complementary situation, not a kind of a replacement. Now, some of you may have seen this before from other workshops I've done. This is the staircase of effective fund development. And essentially, this is going from least effective in the lower left to most effective ways of doing fund development, relationship building. Not surprisingly, the least effective kind of relationship building technique is doing an advertisement or just mailing out a brochure. And then it gets more and more personal as you move up the staircase, from letters to messages to phone calls to the most effective way is sitting down face to face, looking at somebody, talking, asking questions, looking at the photos on their wall. Are there pictures of grandkids or sailboats? Is there a walker in the driveway or is there a skateboard in the driveway? What are the books on the coffee table? Really just getting to know these people. Another way to think about this, another model, if you don't like staircases but you're more into architecture, I've got a pyramid here for you. So some of you may have seen the donor pyramid. And what this is an idealized view of how to kind of pull donors up in relationship higher and higher and deeper. So down here at the base is where the largest number of smaller annual fund donors are, and they're just getting to know the organization. They're starting to identify with it. They're seeking a little bit more information. And if we do our job well and we're good stewards of relationships and we're focused on cultivating these individuals or institutions, then we can draw them up into major gifts, major capital gifts, and provide a deepening sense of involvement and start moving toward that co-ownership area until ultimately we're in their estate plans along with their grandkids. I mean, that's how close in we are. We're part of the family. They're leaving something in their will or they're doing some other kind of planned gift mechanism with our ministry because there's trust, there's commitment, there's credibility. There's a sense of storytelling when we're making the case for philanthropy, for our ministry. We need to be able, as leaders, to articulate why we even exist. What's the particular unmet need or undermet need in the community? And what are our solutions? And what benefit do we really bring? Because if we can't make a compelling and emotional and case with a lot of punch, we know that other organizations are. So we need to be able to tell our stories. And, some of you may have had case statements. I'm sure the higher ed institutions, ministries have case statements, actual, beautiful glossy documents. I'm talking about something beyond that. That's just a tool. But the case itself is something that you need to embody as a view, as an understanding, as a set of principles where you can articulate it and live it out, let's say. And we know that donor support reflects their perception that an organization is meeting a community need and bringing benefit. So it's possible that if your donor support is flagging, that perhaps you're not demonstrating that you're meeting a community need and bringing benefit. That may not be the only reason your program is flagging, but that could be part of it. And especially once we start talking about 4, 5, 6-figure gifts, this really starts to make a difference. Your average $25 check writer will still keep doing that, but we need to go a little bit further if we expect something further from people. Another way of saying what I just said was said by Robert Fogel: fundraising success measures the degree to which an organization's purpose is affirmed. There are 4 key parts to fund development. First is identifying who it is we want to talk to and engage and be in relationship with. And then that cultivation process, which is akin to cultivating your garden. How do we provide the right nutrients, the water, light, and love to let those flowers bloom? And at some point there does need to be a solicitation, and donors actually want that. If you've done number 1 and number 2 right, there's not going to be a problem with soliciting. They're going to be ready. You'll already have an understanding of what they're interested in and what they want to give to and how much they want to give. At this point, if we've done number 1 and number 2 right, they're just waiting for you to ask. So we need to, till our soil and do the first steps right, and then we solicit. And then probably the most common place where organizations just kind of let go at that point and make a terrible, terrible mistake is they don't steward these relationships. They don't take care of these plants that they've so carefully cultivated. Too often organizations get the gift, express gratitude, and move on to other pressing things. And particularly for the CEO and for the board, you're going to be in relationships with presumably the top donor prospects for your organizations, the key people from within and from without the ministry. So you've got a relationship with these people, and you'll stay in touch with them so that the only time they hear from your ministry isn't you asking for money. To have a robust, sound, good fund development program, particularly for the CEO and for board members, there are 3 key components. First of all, having a plan. What's the strategy for our fund development activities? And if you've got an organizational strategic plan, that's the basis of your development strategic plan. So it's not something different, it's something additional. So it's the plan, and then it's participating. It's the actual relationship building, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. And then finally, it's providing the oversight, monitoring results, monitoring activity. Are we doing everything legally and ethically that we should be doing? How do donors feel about their relationship with us? How effective is our direct mail program versus our grant writing program? So strategy, participation, and oversight, just to kind of handily tie them up into 3. Now, I regularly hear board members aren't clear on their roles and expectations of them, and they want to do more to help with fund development, but aren't exactly sure. So I want to just share some ways that can support board members so they can be as helpful as possible to your ministry. The first is providing information to them, from a case statement document to reports on school or ministry activities in general, development activities in particular, trends that are happening in homelessness or higher ed or social services, so that they can feel informed and knowledgeable. That will help with their confidence. Education. I regularly get requests from organizations to do some training for board members to help from everything from how do I make the ask to role playing, to help us do relationship mapping so we can think about the strategies to engage donors. But there's a certain craving or yearning that board members have for coaching and training so that they can feel, again, more confidence stepping into the actual situations. And they can speak more knowledgeably about what the ministry is doing, what's actually happening. Individualizing. Not every board member is the same, and we're not talking about creating an army of major gift officers to just send out there. We need to find out what people are comfortable doing, what they want to do, where their relationships lie, where their time availability is, and carve out something meaningful for every board member, because everybody can be doing something related to development. And then how can we staff them? And maybe if it's a small ministry, maybe the staffing is the CEO, or maybe there are development staff, but to help make the restaurant, reservation, or to help with stamps, envelopes, and letterhead for the board member to write thank you notes, whatever we can do to support their activity. And then the moral support, the encouragement, the appreciation, so people feel good and they can get some successes under their belt and will not be afraid of fund development, but will want to do more of it. That It's not scary, it's actually something really joyful. Have them be part of the thinking and planning process, rather than hand board members the development plan for the year and hope that maybe they can figure out how they fit into it. Let board members be part of that thinking and planning, that strategizing, and have the development plan be something that lives and breathes in meetings, not just here's the plan for the year and let us know how it goes. And probably more than anything else that I hear from board members is this desire to connect more to the mission of their organization, because they come to board meetings, they work through agendas, they go home, but they're not necessarily walking the hallways of the school, or they're not necessarily, meeting clients, getting food, or being sheltered, or all the good work that you do. And board members need to be able to tell their own stories firsthand, have their own experiences, and really get in their DNA the work of the ministry. And so, I know some organizations that actually require board members to spend one day a month volunteering, doing direct service work for what the organization does. However it works for you, there's this desire. Board members got involved generally because they connected with your mission, the work you're doing, and they want to feel closer to it. So there are ways to infuse your board meetings a little bit differently, but there are also ways to bring the board members into the organization a little bit differently. And then here are a few final ways where board members, conversely, can support the organization through their willingness to be advocates and endorsers and supporters and cultivators, and make that ask when it needs to be made, and give of your own time and resources as well.